Have you ever said something you instantly regretted or made a decision in anger that cost you peace, time, or even relationships? You're not alone. In our fast-paced, emotionally charged world, reacting has become second nature, but reacting rarely leads to the best outcomes. What if you could replace emotional reactions with intelligent responses? Today I'm going to share a mindset shift that can completely transform your relationships, decisions, and leadership. React less, respond smarter. Let's dive in. Step 1. Master emotional self-control. Emotional self-retrieval is the cornerstone of personal effectiveness. It's the ability to remain calm, centered, and composed even when the circumstances around you are challenging, unpredictable, or emotionally charged. When you master your emotions, you begin to master your life. Most people allow external events to dictate their internal state. They hear bad news, and immediately they become anxious. Someone criticizes them, and they respond with anger or defensiveness. A plan goes wrong, and frustration takes over. In these moments, they are not in control. Their emotions are. But you are not your emotions. Emotions are powerful signals, not commands. They are like the dashboard lights in a car, telling you something needs attention, but not necessarily telling you what action to take. Emotional self-control begins when you realize that you don't have to obey every feeling that arises. You can observe it, acknowledge it, and choose how to act, rather than being swept away by it. This control comes from awareness. The moment you feel a surge of anger, fear, or disappointment, become aware of it. Label it silently, "This is frustration." Just naming the emotion creates distance. It moves you from being inside the emotion to observing it from the outside. That space, even if it's just a few seconds, gives you the power to choose your response rather than fall into a reaction. One of the most effective techniques for developing this kind of control is pausing before you speak or act. When you feel triggered, train yourself to stop. Take a slow breath in. Count to 5. Ask yourself silently, what's really happening here? What is the best response I can give? This short pause often reveals that what felt urgent isn't nearly as important as it first seemed. Another powerful shift is learning to detach your identity from the moment. You are not the mistake you made, the bad news you received, or the criticism you heard. These are just events, and you are more than your momentary experiences. When you remember this, emotions lose their power to hijack your behavior. Self-control doesn't mean suppression. It's not about pretending everything is fine or pushing your emotions away. In fact, denying what you feel can lead to emotional buildup, which eventually explodes. Real self-control is about acknowledgement without submission. You recognize your emotion, but you don't let it run the show. You remain in the driver's seat. This discipline also sharpens your thinking. When emotions are running wild, logic and reason tend to shut down. But when you stay calm, your mind stays open. You think more clearly. You see options others miss. You communicate more effectively, and you make better decisions, not out of fear or frustration, but from clarity and confidence. Step 2, respond with purpose, not impulse. Responding with purpose rather than impulse is a deliberate shift from acting out of emotion to acting from intention. It means slowing down your automatic reactions and choosing a course of action that aligns with your values, goals, and long-term vision. Most people live in a constant loop of reacting. They hear something they don't like and immediately snap back. They receive criticism and instantly defend. They face a challenge and fall into panic. These impulses are rooted in survival thinking, designed to protect us in dangerous situations. But in everyday life, this type of instant reaction often leads to poor communication, damaged relationships, and decisions we later regret. When you choose to respond with purpose, you're tapping into a higher level of thinking. You're not just reacting to what was said or done, you're evaluating it. You're stepping back and asking, what outcome do I want from this interaction? What would my best self do in this moment? This kind of thinking doesn't come naturally in the heat of the moment, which is why it requires practice and self-discipline. It's the art of interrupting your automatic response and replacing it with a conscious, intentional one. Purposeful responding also involves emotional clarity. Before you speak or act, ask yourself what's really going on beneath the surface. Often the emotion that rises first, anger, irritation, anxiety, is only the outer layer. Underneath might be fear, disappointment, or even a sense of inadequacy. When you understand what you're truly feeling, you're in a much better position to address it constructively. Instead of lashing out, you might choose to express yourself calmly. Instead of withdrawing, you might decide to clarify your boundaries. The purpose behind your response becomes to build, not to break. To move forward, not to escalate the moment. Responding with purpose also means keeping your long-term goals in mind. When someone frustrates you, it might feel satisfying to react sharply. But ask yourself, does this response serve your bigger picture? If you want to be respected, trusted, or seen as a leader, does this impulsive reply take you closer to that or further away? Purposeful responses are not always easy, and they're not always immediate, but they are powerful. They convey maturity, control, and vision. They shift the energy of a conversation and often inspire others to mirror your calmness and clarity. This approach extends beyond verbal communication. It affects your decisions, your actions, even your body language. When you're responding with purpose, your posture reflects confidence instead of defensiveness. Your words carry weight because they've been filtered through thought and intention. You become someone who people listen to, not just because of what you say, but because of how you say it and why. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice this mindset, whether it's in a disagreement with a colleague, a tense moment with a loved one, or a sudden setback in your plans. There is always a space where you can pause and decide, am I reacting or am I responding with purpose? That question alone can be the trigger that transforms your habits and elevates your impact in every area of life. Step 3, create space between stimulus and response. Creating space between stimulus and response is one of the most powerful habits you can develop for personal mastery and emotional intelligence. It means resisting the urge to immediately act on what you feel in the moment and instead inserting a conscious pause, a moment of reflection, before you choose how to respond. This space might only be a few seconds long, but within it lies the difference between a reaction you later regret and a response you're proud of. Every day, you're met with triggers, a harsh word, an unexpected challenge, a perceived insult, a sudden piece of bad news. The stimulus is almost always out of your control. But what happens next, how you respond, is entirely within your power. The average person has a habit of going straight from stimulus to reaction, like a knee-jerk reflex. Something happens, and they respond without thinking. But that kind of automatic response is rarely productive. It's rooted in habit, emotion, and conditioning, not in clarity or conscious choice. The space between stimulus and response is where growth lives. It's the split second where you become aware of what's happening, both around you and inside you. In that space, you recognize the emotion rising. Maybe it's anger, fear, defensiveness, or frustration. And you acknowledge it without being overwhelmed by it. You step outside of the emotion long enough to ask yourself, is this how I want to respond? Is this aligned with who I want to be? The more often you practice this pause, the more natural it becomes. At first, it may feel difficult. The urge to react quickly is strong because it's a learned behavior, but over time, you train your brain to slow down. You start to notice the signals, a racing heart, a tightening jaw, a rush of adrenaline, and instead of following those signals blindly, you breathe, you pause, you think. That simple act gives you a strategic advantage in almost every situation. Leaders, communicators, and successful people across every field have mastered this habit. They're not unfeeling robots. They experience the same emotional triggers as anyone else. But they've trained themselves to use that micro moment between what happens and how they respond. They give themselves time to ask better questions. What's really going on here? What's the best way to handle this? What will serve the situation, not just my ego? This space is where you reclaim your power. When you don't give in to that first wave of emotion, you gain control over your actions. You make choices that are in line with your goals, your principles, and your highest self. And over time, this not only strengthens your relationships and decision-making, it builds your character. It shows people that you are someone who doesn't just react to life, but responds to it with thought, intent. It's in this space that you access wisdom. It's where you choose clarity over confusion, patience over impulse, and strength over volatility. Developing the habit of creating this space doesn't mean you suppress emotion or become passive. It means you become strategic with your energy. You use that pause to shift from being emotionally hijacked to being mentally composed. It's a mental muscle, and like all muscles, it strengthens with use. Step 4, ask questions before you answer. Asking questions before you answer is a discipline of the mind that separates reactive thinkers from reflective leaders. It is a conscious practice of seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. In emotionally charged or high-pressure situations, most people feel the urge to respond immediately, to defend, explain, argue, or assert their opinion without fully grasping the situation or the intent behind what was said. This often leads to misunderstandings, unnecessary conflict, and missed opportunities for connection or resolution. But when you pause to ask thoughtful questions first, you interrupt the reactive pattern. and shift the entire tone of the interaction. The simple act of asking a question does several powerful things at once. First, it signals that you are present. It shows the other person that you are not just waiting for your turn to talk, you are actively trying to understand. This builds trust and reduces defensiveness, creating a more open and productive environment. Second, it slows down the emotional momentum. When you feel triggered or pressured to respond quickly, asking a question buys you time to think clearly. It gives your logical mind a chance to catch up with your emotional state. Asking questions also gives you better information. Most people react based on assumptions. They think they know what the other person meant, or they take words at face value without exploring the context or intent. But questions like, can you tell me more about what you mean by that? Or what made you feel that way? Or how did you come to that conclusion? Can reveal layers of meaning you might have otherwise missed. What initially sounded like criticism might turn out to be a request for help. What felt like an attack might actually be a poorly expressed concern. By asking questions, you uncover the root of the issue rather than reacting to the surface. This habit is especially important in leadership, negotiation, and relationships. Great communicators don't assume, they inquire. They stay curious. They treat every interaction like a puzzle to be solved, not a battle to be won. This mindset creates stronger dialogue and more effective problem solving. It also helps you stay emotionally balanced, because when you're in the mode of asking rather than defending, your focus shifts outward instead of being consumed by your own feelings. The types of questions you ask matter as well. Open-ended questions encourage dialogue and reveal insight, while defensive or accusatory questions can escalate tension. Questions should come from a genuine place of wanting to understand, not from a need to corner or challenge. Tone and body language also play a role. A calm, inquisitive posture invites collaboration, whereas a sharp or skeptical tone can make others shut down. Even in moments when you think you understand the situation, asking a question can reveal that your initial perception was incomplete. We all filter information through our biases, past experiences, and emotional state. Questions help break that filter. They invite clarity, and clarity leads to better decisions. Instead of saying, that's wrong, you might ask, what led you to that perspective? Instead of saying, you don't get it, you might ask, what do you need to understand this better? These subtle shifts create entirely different outcomes. Asking questions before answering doesn't make you passive. In fact, it makes you more powerful because your response is now informed. It becomes more intentional, more precise, and more likely to be received with respect. You're no longer just reacting from emotion or habit. You're engaging with insight. This ability to pause and probe gives you control over the conversation, and more importantly, it gives you control over yourself better. Choose long-term impact over short-term satisfaction. Choosing long-term impact over short-term satisfaction is a mindset that separates those who lead with wisdom from those who live in constant reaction. It's the discipline of resisting the pull of immediate emotional relief in favor of decisions that support your bigger picture. In the heat of the moment, it's tempting to speak sharply, prove a point, vent frustration, or defend your ego. These actions might give you a fleeting sense of power or gratification, but they often come at the cost of trust, respect, or meaningful progress. What feels good in the moment can create lasting damage, while what feels difficult in the moment can build lasting value. This principle applies in every area of life: conversations, relationships, leadership, and personal growth. The need for short-term satisfaction is often rooted in emotion. You feel hurt, so you want to hurt back. You feel disrespected, so you want to assert dominance. You feel misunderstood, so you raise your voice or shut down. But if you take a step back and ask yourself, what will this look like in a day, a week, a year? You gain a new perspective. That question pulls you out of the emotional intensity and reconnects you with your long-term goals. Suddenly, the need to win the moment becomes less important than the desire to win the relationship, preserve your peace, or protect your integrity. This kind of thinking requires maturity. It demands self-awareness and the courage to delay gratification. It's easy to react. Anyone can do that. It takes strength to pause, reflect, and choose a response that serves your future, not just your feelings. When you're guided by long-term impact, you become more strategic. You choose your words more carefully. You weigh the consequences. You understand that your tone, your timing, and your delivery all matter. Not just what you say, but how and when you say it. In professional settings, this mindset builds influence. Colleagues and teams gravitate toward those who can stay composed under pressure and prioritize what truly matters. In personal relationships, it deepens connection. The people closest to you feel safer, more valued, and more understood when they know you're not just reacting from impulse, but responding from care and clarity. And within yourself, this discipline creates peace. You stop being controlled by emotion and start leading with intention. The long-term impact is about asking better questions in the moment. Will this move me closer to who I want to be? Will this strengthen the relationship I care about? Will this add to my reputation, my credibility, my growth? When you learn to answer those questions before you speak or act, you begin to operate on a higher level of emotional intelligence. You become someone who sees beyond the moment, someone who leads by example, someone whose actions reflect not just a reaction to life, but a vision for life. It's about thinking like an investor, not just spending energy for a quick emotional return, but investing energy in a way that compounds over time and creates lasting value. Step 6. Train your mind daily. Training your mind daily is a practice of intentional growth, much like strengthening a muscle through consistent exercise. Just as your body becomes stronger, faster, and more resilient with regular physical training, your mind becomes clearer, calmer, and more disciplined when you give it focused attention each day. The quality of your thoughts directly shapes the quality of your actions, your relationships, your decisions, and ultimately your life. Yet most people spend more time maintaining their physical appearance or checking their devices than they do managing their mindset. They wake up and immediately react to whatever the world throws at them: emails, messages, social media, news, and wonder why they feel overwhelmed or out of control. Mental strength doesn't come from reacting to life. Daily mental training is about creating a space each day where you reconnect with your values, your goals, and your inner stability. This could be through journaling, meditation, visualization, reading, or simply spending a few minutes in silence, reflecting on who you want to be and how you want to show up. When you start your day with intention, you program your mind to lead rather than follow, to respond rather than react. This morning, alignment builds a kind of mental armor that helps you face the day's challenges with more clarity and composure. Mental training also involves recognizing and rewiring your habitual thought patterns. Every day, you're reinforcing certain beliefs about yourself, about others, and about the world around you. Some of these beliefs empower you, while others limit you. Left unchecked, negative thoughts can become your default operating system. But when you practice awareness, you begin to notice those patterns. You catch yourself in moments of doubt, fear, anger, or judgment, and instead of letting those thoughts dictate your mood or behavior, you pause and redirect them. You choose a more productive narrative. You replace "I can't" with "I'm learning." You replace "this is too hard" with "this is how I grow." Another key part of daily mental training is emotional regulation. Life is unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. Unexpected stressors will arise. But the more mentally trained you are, the less these things shake you. You've built the habit of breathing through discomfort. You've practiced the pause. You've rehearsed how to stay calm under pressure. And because you've done this work consistently, you're not scrambling to stay balanced. You're already grounded. This kind of discipline compounds. One day of focus may not seem life-changing, but 100 days of focused thinking can completely reshape the way you live and lead. Small, consistent practices, writing down your thoughts, setting clear intentions, revisiting your goals, reflecting on your behavior, accumulate into a more resilient mindset. You begin to trust yourself more because you've proven that you can guide your own thinking rather than be a prisoner to it. Daily mental training also sharpens your ability to be present. It reduces the noise in your head so you can listen more deeply, speak more clearly, and make decisions from a place of confidence instead of chaos. It gives you an edge that's not loud or flashy, but powerful, an internal strength that others can feel even if they can't name it. Your presence becomes more composed, your words more deliberate, and your actions more consistent with your deeper value. So the choice is always in your hands, to react at a habit or to respond with intention. The difference may seem small in the moment, but over time it shapes who you become. Every pause, every question, every act of restraint and reflection is a brick laid in the foundation of a stronger, wiser, and more grounded version of you. You don't need to control everything around you. You only need to master what happens within you. Because when you react less and respond smarter, you stop being at the mercy of the moment and start becoming the author of your future.